Most people live their entire lives without ever realizing something terrifyingly simple. The reality you believe you're living in is not reality at all. It is a construction, a mental projection, a story constantly rewritten by your mind. And tonight, if you stay until the end of this video, you may never see the world the same way again. Because Buddhism doesn't say reality is broken, it says your perception is. And once you understand why, you cannot unknow it. Right now, wherever you are, you feel certain things. You feel your body. You feel your thoughts. You feel like there is a solid you sitting behind your eyes, watching the world. This feels obvious. It feels unquestionable. But Buddhism begins with a radical claim. What feels obvious is usually the deepest illusion. The Buddha did not start by asking who God is or how the universe began. He asked a far more dangerous question. What is experience itself made of? And when he looked closely, what he found was not what we expect. From a Buddhist perspective, reality is not something you directly touch. It is filtered, shaped, interpreted. Every sound you hear, every image you see, every emotion you feel passes through layers of conditioning before it reaches awareness. Your culture, your memories, your fears, your desires, all color what you think is real. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as your mind needs it to be. Think about this. Two people can stand in the same room, experience the same moment, and walk away with completely different realities. One feels safe, one feels threatened, one feels loved, one feels rejected. If reality were truly objective at the level we experience it, this would not happen. Buddhism says the difference is not the world, it is the mind interpreting it. The Buddha called this process perception, and he taught that perception is unstable, unreliable, and deeply influenced by craving and aversion. You are constantly leaning toward what you like and pulling away from what you dislike. This subtle movement happens so fast that you mistake it for truth. But it is not truth. It is preference masquerading as reality. This is why Buddhism says suffering does not come from events, it comes from misperception. You believe things should be permanent, but everything changes. You believe the self is solid, but it is fluid. You believe happiness exists in external conditions, but conditions are never under your control. Reality keeps violating your expectations, and you call that pain. But the pain is not in the violation, it is in the expectation itself. One of the most unsettling teachings in Buddhism is that there is no fixed self experiencing reality. What you call I is a temporary collection of sensations, thoughts, memories, and habits. Like a river, it feels continuous, but it is never the same from moment to moment. The mind creates the illusion of a solid observer because it is afraid of impermanence. It clings to identity the way a drowning person clings to debris. And once you believe in a fixed self, reality becomes personal. Every comment feels like an attack. Every loss feels like a failure. Every change feels like a threat. But Buddhism says this personalization is a misunderstanding. Events are not happening to you, they are happening. The sense of to me is added later by the mind. This is why two people can face the same hardship and one breaks while the other becomes free. The difference is not strength, it is clarity. One believes the story the mind tells, the other sees through it. Buddhism teaches that what you call reality is actually a stream of momentary experiences arising and passing away. Sounds arise, fade, thoughts appear, disappear, feelings come, go. But instead of observing this flow, the mind freezes certain moments and labels them. This is good, this is bad, this is me, this is mine. And once labeled, the mind defends these labels as if they were absolute truth. But labels are not reality. They are shortcuts, useful but dangerous when mistaken for truth. Consider how quickly your emotional reality changes. One message can lift you into joy. One memory can pull you into despair. Did the world change, or did your interpretation change? Buddhism would say the latter. The world is not stable enough to carry the weight of your happiness. That weight was never meant to be placed there. The Buddha compared ordinary perception to seeing a rope in the dark and believing it is a snake. The fear feels real, the heart races, the body reacts. But when light appears, nothing had to be removed. The snake was never there, only misunderstanding. In the same way, much of your suffering comes from mistaking mental constructions for reality. You believe thoughts are facts. You believe emotions are instructions. You believe identity is fixed. Buddhism invites you to look closer, not to reject experience, but to understand its nature. When you sit quietly and observe your mind, something strange happens. Thoughts arise on their own. You do not summon them. Emotions appear without permission. Sensations change without warning. Where is the controller you thought you were? Buddhism doesn't answer this question with words. It answers it with silence. This realization can be frightening. If there is no solid self, what is living your life? But Buddhism says this fear is the last defense of illusion. When the self loosens, what remains is not emptiness in the negative sense, but openness, freedom, responsiveness without attachment. Reality, seen clearly, is not cold or meaningless. It is intimate, fluid, alive. But you can only experience it when you stop insisting it conform to your expectations. This is why Buddhist meditation is not about escaping reality. It is about meeting it without distortion. Sitting still, watching breath, watching mind, you begin to see how much of your experience is commentary rather than fact. The commentary fades. What remains is simple awareness. And in that awareness, suffering loses its grip. Not because pain disappears, but because resistance does. Pain without resistance is just sensation. Suffering is pain plus the belief that it should not be happening. The modern world trains you to believe reality is something to conquer, optimize, and control. Buddhism says reality is something to understand. When you stop fighting what is, clarity arises naturally. So when Buddhism says reality is not what you think, it is not an insult, it is an invitation. An invitation to see without filters, to experience without clinging, to live without being trapped by the stories your mind repeats. And here is the quiet truth that changes everything. When you no longer demand reality to make you whole, you discover you were never incomplete. The world doesn't need to change for peace to appear. Only your relationship with it does. If you sit with this understanding long enough, you will notice something subtle. The world feels lighter, less personal, more alive. And the fear that once controlled you begins to dissolve. Not because you defeated it, but because you finally saw through it. Reality was never the enemy. Misunderstanding was.